You have heard a lot of things already and must have a good idea. So I like open the discussion to the floor. Anybody wanted to first? To be the first, go to the microphone.
My name is Aditya Ghosh. I'm from the University of Wollongong in Australia. I was going to make my question long, but I'll not make it short. It's going to be a very short one. So, but quite seriously, I was looking at the very interesting things that all the panelists said. And it struck me that there's something maybe underpinning everything that's been said that maybe is the focus that we might be not entirely, identifying. And that is that we're in the business of delivering new functionality to people. And we're saying, and so for example, Louise said, environmental services, health and education. Ephraim said government. LJ had similar things to say. We're delivering new kinds of functionality to people, and the functionality is being delivered by a combination of IT and humans. Right? So are we missing maybe the crux of what we're about, which is this novel synthesis of IT and humans to deliver new functionality to people? Is that really it? So it's both maybe a comment, a suggestion, and a prod for a certain line of thinking.
I'm actually very confident in the cloud delivering new functionality. The thing that keeps me awake is we have to deliver a lot of old functionality. We might do it in a new way, but we have social commitments, for example, with Social Security. If you've been paying into your life insurance for the last 50 years, we have those commitments. We have a lot of things that we have to deliver that are not new. It's just an ongoing continuation. We probably have to do it in a new way to make ourselves efficient. And to me, that's a much harder challenge. Creating new stuff on the cloud, I think we're beyond the early stages. I mean, the cloud is no longer a new technology. I saw a statistic the other day that 1/3 of daily users of the internet, every day, 1/3, access at least one service that goes through the Amazon cloud. So it's not a new thing. It's out there. So I think delivering new solutions, new services on the will happen on the cloud. It's the natural place. From my concern is how do we deliver the traditional legacy things that we're committed to deliver? How do we deal with that on the cloud?
I think the idea that there's some kind of synthesis or symbiosis between the human and the IT is an important idea. I think it's not really a new idea, but I think it's important because the world is getting more complex. There's much more data. Some of these processes are difficult to automate, and perhaps we can utilize humans to facilitate that automation. So I think we should put the human in the loop.
Cloud computing, service computing, is a very powerful technology, especially suitable to our information age. What's the problem with the information age? There are a lot of information. How we are going to manage, make a good use of that? We store a lot of information we probably forgot, never be able to use. Why? Because it's very difficult to organize, very difficult to find when you need it, where to find. Although there are a lot of new progress, good progress in data mining, but we all know that's a very time-consuming and not very powerful. Okay? So what we'll look at is, think about 30 years ago, we talk about what's the problem? Larger scale software, right? We have a powerful computer. How we are going to use it? We need software. But how we are going to deal with software engineering? It's a horizontal. But we have to work with the practitioner, the application. Talk about aerospace application. Talk about the banking. Talk about the government services, healthcare. each application get their own requirement and own constraint and own quality of services. So we have to tailor it down. We cannot stand alone, live alone. IBM very successful. Why? Because they work with the application, the customer. That's why they are successful. From top to bottom, solve all their problems. I think a lot of companies try to do that, but whether they have the resource or they have the manpower and the infrastructure to provide that kind of a global service, that depends upon how well you can do it and also determine how successful you are. Now, in terms of research, we have a lot of research to do. We talk about people talk about, hey, computer science people, network people already got a communication problem, right? But think about dealing with an application. We deal with aerospace people, right? And deal with, now talk about social network. And we talk about human factor. If we want to really advance our technology to provide better services, we need to know more social science, human factor. What do we have done with the human factor? We limit it to, make the things more easy to use. For who to use? Us to use, or the end user to use. But how about the human factor in terms of not only they are dealing with the data, but also the trustworthiness of the system, right? We talk about the service. It's a trustworthy. Now, once you deal with the trust, it involves a lot of things. Involving human factors, psychology, and all those things. Talk about how we communicate with them. And I try to do research in that area. I tell you, it's a very, very difficult. And that's really the grand challenge, and we probably cannot achieve result very quickly. We have to go along and work hard on it. Okay, that's my opinion. Any other question? Well, yeah, actually yesterday there's the key panel talk about the deployment, right? Acceptance. Talk about the cloud computing used in healthcare, used in American Express, and Intel. Each of them is different. So if we want to be successful, we have to understand what the customer needs. And then we provide the service tailored to them, cost effectively, and reliably. Okay? Okay, any other question? Yes.
Yeah, I'm Ulrich Moser from IBM. And
yeah. So you can say a lot of good things.
Well, of course, I agree with most of what you have said, but of course I have also some questions here regarding actually the development of cloud in the verticals of the industry, and I think the panelists have shown it actually in the examples that we see different ways and actually in healthcare, in social environment, in other things, of course. So how do you see or how do you value actually that the cloud will participate in each of those verticals, or do you see that there is a common cloud for everything? Because I can consider that there are different speeds and developments going on in each of those, let's say, industry verticals or anyhow of things to become a certain standard in some of those areas, and how do you see and value those developments going forward?
Well, there are a lot of technology research area we have to exploit, okay? Like how we handle the data, classify the data. We collaborate. We're not going to open all the data. We only open the data for our collaboration, because next week we may be competitive, right? And we talk about the security, privacy, all those issues. Now, there are a lot of research problems. I think many of us from university, I tell you, this is the hardest research area we have, okay? And I'm sure next year the conference will be 50% more attendance. Because, compare every year we identify a lot of research problems. Maybe at the beginning we think it's this gimmick industry, okay? Not much research going on. Not true. Exactly you say. If we talk about specific application, we can get quite far away, make good progress by understand the domain, application domain. But how you are going to broaden that to other areas,
Exactly.
that we need a research.
Okay.
For example, healthcare, I think you'll see healthcare is now, record sets are growing tremendously because of the amount of image data that's out there. Image data is very amenable to the cloud. I think it's a natural thing. You will see it all migrating to some cloud-like environment. Patient records, that's going to be tough. There are some standards on records, and those ones that standardize, again, will be like media records, and they'll naturally migrate to a cloud-like environment. Billing, I'm not sure. I would say keep your eyes on Kaiser Permanente, who of all the groups out there seems to be leading the charge. So if you're interested in that, I think it'll be very good to follow them in the next couple of years. So I see some areas that are natural in these verticals that will naturally migrate to the cloud. The others, I don't know where they'll go.
I think you raised a very, very important question, because in definitely in different industries or in different domains, they have also been thinking about how to leverage cloud computing to deliver the solutions or services. So like what just Ephraim just mentioned, just there are just a few industry-specific examples. So I think in the industry, what we are trying to do right now is try to come up with a solution framework or solution reference architecture. Just like what we did for the service-oriented architecture, I think is the right time for us to think about the cloud computing reference architecture for various industries. So as long as they have a reference architecture which can be used to populate contents which are directly related to that particular domain or industry, or the data format could be specifically designed for that particular industry. So the reference architecture for the cloud definitely will be the way for us to standardize, at least from the look-like perspective. You can say one reference architecture can be used for multiple industries. So that's what I'm going to say, or that's what I want to say in the coming maybe years. So just for information, like IBM, of course, is one of the leading players in standardizing the cloud computing reference architecture at Open Group. And also like Kindi, we are also trying to use solution context as a starting point, to standardize the service orientation part and the virtualization part, and then put them into the solution context, which include the business process aspect, including the subscription and the provisioning in the cloud environment, and then get connected with the integration, information architecture, and the governance aspects. So I think those leading players, in the enterprise domain are trying to work together to come up with something which can be called as a standard, cloud computing reference architecture.
I'm glad you asked that question, because I have a request for this community. It would be nice to get presentations that are case studies. So for example, I remember the initial IBM cloud offering, and I saw that in Wuxi, and their first cloud. And basically they were offering rational software on the cloud so you can try it out without buying it. And that was a few years ago. It would be nice to have a case study. Where is it today? So it would be very nice to get various case studies, so we can actually learn specific verticals, whatever they tried, how far they've gotten in, say, 2-3 years.
Okay, my name is Long Wen. I am IBM TJ Watson Research. Okay, so today I saw a very good presentation in the panel. So, for example, the environment, the education, they can be they can benefit from the cloud. So, but I see that many of these problems are ad hoc and not well formulated. So, it seems they require a lot of like AI, like tracing, like analysis, such basic or fundamental technologies to be developed. But we know that such fundamental technologies are in slow development in recent couple of decades. So will this actually limit or be the bottleneck of the cloud development in the future decade? Thank you.
Your question?
So, my question is, will this kind of slow development of the fundamental technology limit or be the bottleneck of the cloud development in the future decade?
Well, I don't think we call it bottleneck. We just have not progressed to that level, right? That's why we needed to do research. Okay? And the important part of this area is we already see there are a lot of incentive from all the applications. So that means you can guarantee for the next 30 years you'll get a lot of problem to work on. Okay? And also the resources we'll pour in because it's important. No, I agree. In fact, if you look at the fundamental, like LJ talk about a lot of basic things and so forth, there are a lot of things to work on. In fact, to tell the truth, this is also a great challenge for us in the university, in the education area, how to modify and upgrade our curriculum. So that, because we cannot teach the things already teach and add a lot of new things without prolong, ask a student take 6 years to graduate instead of 4, right? So what we have to do is we have to upgrade ourselves. And that's exactly what we're doing. And also provide online services for people update their knowledge after they graduate.
We are trying to do things, and if we are addressing your questions, how can we measure that we are actually achieving things for society? And what things are we losing by making these improvements?
I look at 2 things that I measure. One is very easy for me to measure, and that is how much I'm spending and quantify a little bit of what I'm getting for it in return. That's easy to measure. I know how much I'm spending, and it seems like so far we're spending more and more and more. So the other part of it is harder to measure. But the second part, and that's something actually Louise mentioned, and that is, what is the social impact of what we're doing? That's a great question, and it's something I agree with you we should all actually be looking at. I don't know how to measure that.
I think rate of adoption or acceptance is a good measure for you to determine whether what you have developed is in fact successful. Are people using it?
Yeah, from the business perspective, definitely return on investment is the most important factor, right? So we can measure in the when you start any new business or new directions. The second one is from in the enterprise space, you have to figure out ways to measure the continuous growth of the company. So that means continuous innovation and the associated kind of results could be used to measure how new technology can be adopted to improve the operations of the business. So that's what I want to say. Thanks.
Recently, Facebook defeated MySpace, and it wasn't because they had better infrastructure. It was because they provided a better service. But I doubt that there are even half a dozen people in this room who could actually explain exactly why the Facebook service is better. What we need to have, I think, is a science of quality of service. Not what we call at the moment quality of service, which would be called quality of plumbing, but the kind of service that makes you want to use the service, that makes you want to need to use the service, that's going to make the service change the world. So my question is, can we create a science of quality of service?
My answer is I don't know.
You know, you remember our first keynote speaker talk about science as a service, right? So we already have it. Depends how you look at it. It's easy to play around with the terminology, but I think what we have to do is really analyze and think indeed what are the fundamentals. We needed to teach our young students at the grade school level and high school level, community school and university, start from the beginning, the whole thinking about the services and the new concept.
The kind of services that Michael is talking about, I think, has to do more with human factors, which has come up several times in this conference. This has to do more with psychology, sociology. You know, how do you determine what people want? How do you determine what they like? And, you know, it requires some other kinds of studies than what most of us are used to doing in doing some human surveys to find out, you know, why do they like Facebook? Why didn't they use MySpace?
No, right now, obviously, because everybody uses services and penetrate to almost all the applications. So there are a lot of things going on. It's a multidisciplinary and a cross-disciplinary, and you know, it's not one discipline. So when we come down is when mature enough, you may come up, just like think about computer science. Okay, 40, 50 years ago, when we start computer science department, a lot of people argue whether computer science is a discipline. Right?
It's true.
Okay. But hopefully, we move much faster, so service will become very clear whether it's a discipline or a science much quicker, not take 50 years.
Yeah, Steve.
Okay, I think, we
Yeah.
have to finish it. Of course, I let you finish.
Yeah, I think we all know right now everything can be treated as a service. So that's why in the past years, this community actually has been working on the taxonomy of services computing. Of course, the current version, published on the computer.org website is an extension of our current ACM computing taxonomy. So we do actually look forward more contributions from everyone in the room and the community at large. So you can help define what kind of key taxonomy or keywords related to cloud, to social networking services, or some other service-related items. So once we put everything, in the container, so we can, come back and look into the details and decide which one could be really used to form a word called science, right? So that's something we can do together. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, our time up. After this session, there's exciting things, talk about the Best Paper Award and also Service Cup and all those things. So please stay and thank for all the panelists. Thank you for coming.